será tu legado más grande en la vida, por lo que le estaremos eternamente agradecidos.
Muchas gracias, compañero Pedro, por leer esta carta tan emotiva. Tuve que practicar mindfulness y respiración. La he escuchado varias veces y siempre de alguna manera toca estos botones, estos espacios, que precisamente es lo que entendemos y hemos aprendido poco a poco como la familia de BT aquí, que es una de las experiencias más valiosas que también los pacientes y los familiares nos dan a nosotros. Nos ayudan a encontrarnos, a también entender que esto es un estilo de vida, el DBT y las estrategias que se utilizan. Así que esperamos que esta carta les motive a continuar desarrollándose y también buscando siempre las alternativas para poder atender a estos pacientes y a los familiares. Ahora pasamos al cierre de la actividad en cuanto a lo que es la discusión de preguntas, el panel de preguntas con el doctor Domingo Márquez y los presentadores que estuvieron hoy en la tarde.
Each get one. Bien, vamos a estar la próxima 30 minutos tenemos. Samuel, tenemos 30 minutos, ¿no? 30 minutos. We have 30 minutes. And, si tienen preguntas se acercan y las van haciendo y relacionadas a las presentaciones de la tarde, que en gran medida pues estaban hablando de cómo diagnosticar e identificar a adolescentes y el manejo de las autolesiones, y luego también a nivel de la perspectiva familiar, la validación.
Algo importante es que si necesitan traducción, por favor déjenos saber,
sí,
en la mano y con mucho gusto lo hacemos.
Pueden hacer sus preguntas en español y nosotros las pasamos.
Pueden ir poniéndose en fila aquí con sus preguntas.
Good afternoon, I'm Maria Batti. I work as a clinical supervisor. I want to congratulate you today. This afternoon has been very, very productive.
Where are you?
Oh my God, okay. I wanted to ask about the cult movement of the emos and the importance of a community-based intervention. Okay, they do inflict a lot of self-damage too.
As for
Have you thought about it?
There are any number of subgroups that get involved in self-injury. I'm not well versed in emo to be able to actually understand what this is all about. So I'm sorry.
I think it's important to research that aspect of our cultural diversity. What is happening? First we have the punks, then we have the gothics, and now we have the emos. And every time it gets a little bit more dangerous. So it's worth a study, you know? It's very important.
Habíamos pensado también en lo que van añadiendo algunas preguntas. How about the cultural context that we explained, and most of the some of the presenters talk how to distinguish as a therapist in Puerto Rico what is an emotional response from impulse or an emotional or a response or dysregulation from an emotion, a high emotion. So I don't know if I'm explaining myself, but one of the persons this morning asked me that, and they were interested in learning how do you think our culture and context can influence that in therapy, in terms that we are very emotional people. What? Yes. And we are
welcome to the species.
Some of us tends to be very expressive, and we want to just to know your feedback on that.
Yes, Alan, you should answer next to your Latin wife. What about Latin culture and emotional reaction? Yes, please.
No comment. You should go first, sweetie.
Well, I was actually going to speak about some of the work that we've done in Scandinavia. In Scandinavia, ever been to any of those countries, they tend to be not very expressive.
Not in ways that we're used to.
Right, not in ways that we may kind of relate to. What it seems like big emotion for them, we would go, huh? That's an emotion? Really? And they found us particularly outlandish to begin with. Like, oh, wow, you all are so big. And we were in that context. We didn't fit kind of culturally. They learned to adapt. And so it does matter. I mean, culture does matter. Expressivity does matter. There are normative expressivities in Latin culture. And so, we would ask you all to, and that's why it's really important for people to be familiar with various cultures, whatever the culture they are treating, to understand kind of expressivity-wise, something that may be perfectly kind of like normative within a Latin culture, which wouldn't be normative within a Scandinavian culture, which may not be normative in an American culture. Right? So, and even within kind of those cultures, there are subcultures. It's not like all, I mean, my family's from Mexico. It's not like in Mexico there is one Mexicano. No, there are several different subgroups within that. So even within that. And so really what we want to emphasize is looking at kind of like the function of those emotions. And is it disruptive within that person's function? That's really kind of the question. Is it disruptive within their family? Is it disruptive within their, relationships? Those kinds of things.
And that's, I think, where we have to jump in. It's not so much if it's working, but when it doesn't work. When it doesn't work, it means there's a mismatch. It may be that whatever, say, let's take a teen and a parent, just to make it simple, two people, whatever the teen is doing is not understood by the parent, or vice versa. It's a mismatch. Either the teen's emotion is just too big, the parent gets scared by it, but actually it's perfectly normative, or that teen, or that teen's temperament and the teen's social group, peer group. So the parent needs to then learn to not be scared by that much expression, or vice versa. So it's the mismatches that make it more likely for the person to be invalidated. Persons to be told that your experience is wrong. It's not what you should feel in that situation. It's not what you should want in that situation. So, for example, for children who are quite different temperamentally. Anybody have children who are different temperamentally? Same, family. So our youngest is, I dare say, more like his mother. He's
lucky
kind of,
boy.
Lucky boy, I agree. But more reactive, say, than I am. More reactive, maybe more like...
More Latino.
More Latino. Absolutely. But, I'm kind of used to this. This doesn't faze me at all. I'm not as reactive, but it doesn't scare me or bother me, obviously. So I don't think he feels invalidated. I really don't. So it's not a mismatch. I'm not as reactive as he is, but I know the difference between when he's upset versus when he's, really upset, as opposed to, that's just blaming, it's fine. So it's the mismatches we have to pay attention to.
But in order to pay attention, there's been a history of having to pay attention to that
Sure,
difference.
absolutely.
So it takes some time.
Right, but part of it is you can think of it as cultural sensitivity, but also just difference sensitivity. And I think this is the big problem that happens in families, is especially if the parents are kind of like each other temperamentally, and then they have a child who doesn't quite fit. It's easier to think there's something wrong with the child than simply this child is just a little absolutely in the normal range, just maybe somewhere in the other direction. And that's easy to invalidate that because we might not understand it. And that's where validation becomes so important. Teaching that deep kind of listening, that real awareness, paying attention.
I just wanted to say, related to what you're saying, I think not only culturally, but teenagers nowadays, the way they speak, and a lot of what they say is, for example, our teenagers might say, oh, if I have to go to the class, I'd rather kill myself. Oh, I'd rather die. Or, but when you've had a child who has actually meant it, then all of that lingo changes for a parent. And then that child gets really upset when you misunderstand, because he's like, I don't really mean it.
What a great example. That's such a great example. So for you as a parent, the idea, of course, is to help you learn not to pay attention to that, but to look for other cues that might also be present, like making eye contact while saying it might mean, like, it's just throwaway words. It just means, I don't like the teacher. Oh, I want to kill myself if I have to go back to that class. But I'm looking at you when I'm saying it, as opposed to looking down. I'm not saying that would answer it, but it could be, there are going to be other cues you have to pay attention to, or simply just not overreacting and just continuing to listen. Like, what comes next? Oh, what's for dinner? Is very much less distressing than, let me get on the internet and look up if I can buy hemlock nearby, different kind of problem.
Sometimes it becomes a threat as well. It's like,
Oh, sure, it could be, have a different function, like a
you
threat.
made me do that, I'd rather die. And then that's...
Ok. Voy en español. Es relacionado al término que comúnmente escuchamos entre los terapeutas y los mismos familiares relacionado a la manipulación. Es común.
You got that? About manipulation.
Es común que pacientes que son altamente, pues, con estas conductas que puedan decirle que están haciéndolo para manipular. Pueden entonces aclarar el término y explicar.
He wants to talk about when some therapists just go right through he's trying to manipulate me, and then, also engage the parents into dealing with that. So how about talking a little bit about the M word, which we don't like?
We have parents who come to us all the time to say that our kid is manipulative. And what we say is they're really terrible manipulators. Because really good manipulators, you don't know you're being manipulated. And in a kind of irreverent way, we often say, by the end of the program, your kid's really going to know how to manipulate. That is, they're going to influence the situation. Manipulation actually is pejorative. It is it's always used and is meant as a pejorative. But if you take that out of it, it is simply to influence the situation so it goes your way, which I would bet 99.9% of you know how to do. That is, you know how to say, no, I think I want to get, I don't know, a beer rather than something else, and get everybody to go out with you. You know how to influence the situation. Our patients do not know how to confidently or effectively influence the situation, so they get labeled as manipulative.
Also, I think as a therapist, I always remind my students that thinking you're being manipulated is not an evidence that that's going on. So sometimes you just think or feel it, and you start being defensive, and it won't work.
The fact that you feel something doesn't mean it's true. It only means that you feel it.
Hi. My question is more related about the fear of BBD itself between clinicians, and that's sort of the letter, you know, that when they were reading it, so, and other posts that they keep saying like that much fear. So the question is, what can we do with our colleagues? Because even when we have evidence-based treatment, even when we have so much information, there's still so much fear. What can we do?
Which side of the dialectic do you want to be on? The acceptance side or the change side? Right? Because the acceptance side would be to really try to be curious, like, gee, with all this, why is it that you still think that this is such a scary, untreatable problem? And then the change side is like, you're a professional, go read something. You know, we've had good literature for the last 25 years. Go read something. Don't be stuck in the 1930s. Come on. I mean, you know, maybe a little of both. I don't know, what do you think? The last one was maybe a little too irreverent.
Yeah. A little, I mean, what I tell both my clinician friends who have similar attitudes is that if you have to have a psychiatric diagnosis, borderline personality disorder is not a bad one to have because we can actually treat it. That generally gets them to open up their eyes and think a little bit.
Pregunta.
¿Hay más preguntas?
¿Pero todo claro?
Quitaron el micrófono. Melissa primero, Normario.
Okay. So non-suicidal self-injury seems to be trending nowadays. For example, not so long ago, when Justin Bieber started smoking weed, it went viral, and a lot of young girls started cutting and putting up pictures online, that sort of thing. You didn't know that?
Claro que no.
Okay. So, I was just wondering if the Department of Health or like, are there any measures being taken towards psychoeducating young people about the risks of self-harming, or like what measures are institutions like the Department of Health or the Department of Education taking in order to prevent this from going on further?
I don't know of any formal interventions that any government agency is doing about self-injury, and I suspect, at least for the next 4 years, there won't be much of a look at that. Or 3 years and 6 months, or whatever it is.
I think what we see is that there isn't anything formal going on, but in different school districts, at least in the continental U.S., different school districts are trying to address it, and at times having kind of psychoeducation programs within the schools. You know that in Nevada, which is not a great school system, in the school district, in one of the school districts, they actually placed an emphasis on self-injury and suicide. And it did appear that kids were then willing to go to the counselor who did the presentation to let them know, my friend, Mary is doing this. I'm really worried about her. And they would then reach out to Mary. But in terms of systematically, we haven't seen that. And as I was mentioning, at least in our program, the teens often say, why aren't DBT skills taught in our school system? And that's on the one hand, that's a wonderful idea, and we have no idea how we would accomplish that. Who would be responsible for that, and how we'd even fit that in. And we'd need a government that would be very supportive of that. And we haven't had one in a really long time, not just our current administration, but past administrations haven't paid attention to this either.
Barry Walsh, who is from Massachusetts, does have a protocol to be brought into schools to help with self-injury. It's something to look at. And there is a real push now. There's a new DBT in Schools, written by the Mazas and Alec Miller, and I think Jill Raffis is on that too. There's a whole manual about how to bring DBT skills into a curriculum, and they are piloting that in a number of school systems around Westchester and some other places.
There are some other countries that have done some more secondary prevention work. For example, in Finland, they've trained teachers to identify kids at risk and then have programs, rather than giving all kids access to a prevention or intervention program, teachers to identify kids that have more resources available. Those things are more possible in smaller countries like Finland, not so much bigger than Puerto Rico. I think there are 5 million people in Finland. So something's eking along in the world, but it's slow.
I trained personally with Albert Ellis Institute. I trained with Albert Ellis in New York, here in Puerto Rico. And essentially, Albert Ellis' theory is rationality. Nothing but rationality. And we Puerto Ricans, at least myself, I used Albert Ellis therapy. I got insulted because patients felt insulted with it, because you have to question, very vigorously, the rational thinking of the patient. So I abandoned Ellis' way of treating patients because I felt that it was not adequate for the Puerto Ricans because of the way we think. We are kind of irrational many, many times. And when we question the irrationality of the thinking with Puerto Ricans, they get insulted. So we have to be careful with your theory of communication, because what you were explaining now was a theory of communication, and behind the theory of communication is the rational thinking. So we have to be careful with some kind of theories.
I'm not willing to rule theories out because they're rational.
Huh?
I'm not willing to rule theories out just because they're rational. It's a theory also of emotion. So I think the idea is to be on both sides. There's nothing irrational about emotion.
Huh?
There's nothing irrational about emotion. Emotions are perfectly... Well, I'm not Albert Ellis, thank goodness. He's also dead, thank goodness.
We have to be careful with some theories.
Of course.
This country, to our country, to Puerto Rico, from other countries,
of course,
like the United States, and I'm just giving an example of Alice theory, because it is a little bit difficult to apply.
Cierto. Yo tuve ese problema. Yo adiestré con Albert Ellis. Luego hice DBT. Y yo hice adiestramiento con Albert Ellis. Usé el modelo. Tienes razón, yo tengo que dividirlo. Yo no puedo usar DBT y usar el TREC juntos con un paciente, porque definitivamente, si yo cuestiono a un paciente PPD de la manera que me adiestraron en el instituto, definitivamente me va a arrancar los pelos. Así que...
Communication, that is theoretically a communication theory, right?
Sí.
Communication, effective communication. And Alice was very careful with the communication with Puerto Rico.
Exactly.
Because we are not rational society. And we get something. I was the but we really have to manage it. Because that I was just going beyond.
En esencia es invalidante, definitivamente el modelo es invalidante y va en contra de lo que están hablando acá.
But
Así
I'm
que
very careful with
definitivamente hay que tener cuidado al combinarla. Gracias.
Muchas gracias por eso. Ahora,
Sí, mucho cuidado con eso.
gracias por eso. Una pregunta adicional.
Lo voy a decir en español porque tengo miedo 5 de 5. Así que.
Fear on 5.
Fear on 5.
Diary crime style.
Currently, I am interning the Ponce Health Sciences University, and I in the DBT program.
Te estoy invalidando en mi mente.
Yeah. Okay. Super. Gracias. And sometimes we have like the concepts. We have a good supervision. We have very good supervision right here in Puerto Rico. But sometimes we missteps in the boundaries, and where we have to como dejarlo ahí, como en ocasiones como hasta dónde es el bienestar, what is the point in the wellness of the patient and the wellness as a therapist. Sometimes it's like I want to have like maybe an advice to set that boundaries very clear.
They struggle with what they're taught in the ethics classes and what we teach in DBT with the whole look for your own. So, looking for wisdom. Apparently, I'm not enough. Jealousy, 5 out of 5.
Lo hace bien, pero pues también están los expertos aquí.
I won't translate
Los
that.
otros expertos. The others experts.
Okay. She said the experts are in. She was shy. Remember, she was shy. 2 minutes ago, she was shy.
Opposite action.
Apágale.
I was gonna say.
Apaga el micrófono.
You gotta reinforce that opposite action.
I think the fear went down.
I love it. I love it. I think she's
Enjoying
really
it. That's outstanding.
The skills are working.
Yeah.
Too well.
Opposite action. You know, I think I probably all can comment on this. The question you're raising is really important one in the development of every therapist. And I don't think it ever stops. I think we're always finding the right balance between meeting the needs of our clients as much as possible while still observing our limits and staying in our role. You know, the dialectic that Marsha Linehan puts out is that we're both a human being just like a client, and we have separate roles. And they're both always true. So as long as we keep both of them true, we can't fall too far out of balance. That makes sense.
Thank you.
That's, you know,
I think, depending on how kind of your team is functioning, that is one of the functions of the team. And on our team, we actually check in with each other every single week to see how in balance we feel we are within our limits. And our limits change. If I'm really sick, my limits are going to be quite different than when I'm healthy and well fed and sleep is okay. And my team helps me be in balance and kind of checking in of, it seems like, are you extending too much? Are you not extending enough? How do we as team members keep each other in balance? So I think just in a pragmatic sense, figuring out within your team, how do you help each other manage that? Especially, when you're still in school and you have different kind of deadlines and things. So your boundaries could change a lot over the course of one semester. And figuring out how do you talk about that on your team in a regular kind of way, so that, you kind of try to help each other maintain that.
Yeah, it seems to me that crossing ethical boundaries is never a good idea, or rarely a good idea, very rarely a good idea. And I think that when we're coming to look at our own personal limits, it's really our team that it might say to us, well, how is this in the service of the patient? I mean, do you really think that this is, one, sustainable Do you really think you're helping the patient solve their problems? So, as Alan pointed out, it is your own limits within a particular role. So it's more than just, I think it's more than just my own personal limits as a human being. It's my personal limits within my role.
Thank you.
I'll give you an actual real example if you want on this, because I had a client once who, we have Thanksgiving, big American holiday, right? And lots of food, family, kind of stuff. And she said to me, what are you doing for Thanksgiving? And I said, well, I'm going to be home.